Hey everyone, thanks for joining us. I'm waiting for Melissa to join me. Hi Melissa,
Hello.
how are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I am awesome.
I was hoping I could get it to join through my computer, but it didn't seem to let me. Can you hear me okay, or should I put on?
I hear you well. How is
Okay.
everyone? Is everyone hearing us well? Let's see on chat. Okay, someone said I'm very excited to learn from you both. It's great. Okay, I think they can hear us well. So let's start. Let me start with actually what I know about you. And I know that you're the author of Crisis Ready book, and you've been teaching in schools, Harvard University, NYU, about crisis management, and you're a crisis management expert. And that's why we are in the midst of global pandemic, uncertainties, challenges. And that's why I wanted to talk to you, because I think it's a perfect time to talk about how we can handle the crisis. But I want to start with first, where does this passion come from? How did you become an expert? Because I remember watching one of your YouTube videos, and you ended the video by saying, "This is my passion." And the way you said it, I'm like, that is her. It's like really passionate. So where
It's,
does the being that crisis management expert, where does that come from? Let's start from there.
I think I used to have a different answer. But over the years, over time, I think that I have come to realize the bigger picture of where the passion lies. It's not in managing a crisis. It's in helping organizations better understand what it means to do right by the people they serve through the most challenging, devastating, critical times.
Mhm.
So really what it is, I mean, fundamentally, what drives me is how can you, exactly that, how can you do right? How can you be a force for good in this world in your capacity? And in my opinion, businesses, organizations, whether we're talking government, public sector to private sector, they have such a responsibility and an opportunity to do so much good, because
Mhm.
especially corporate organizations, they have trust, right? When they do their job right, when they're good at their branding, and when they're great at their marketing, and when they perform well and provide quality services and products, they create a connection with members of society who are their stakeholders, right? Because we're all human beings and part of society. And when times are challenged, they have an opportunity to rise to that and do and serve people for the greater good. And I think fundamentally, that's what I see as being crisis management, crisis readiness, successful crisis management.
Mhm. And how did it start? You just one day you said, I want to be a crisis management expert, or
No,
yes.
no, actually. So I've been an entrepreneur since I was 21.
Uh-huh.
So, my entire adult life pretty much. And I was doing over 10 years ago now, I was doing brand strategy, digital brand strategies. And I remember reading one day, everybody was at the time was getting on the social media bandwagon. So it was all social, digital, mobile. And I remember thinking, or seeing all of the risk that could come with two-way communication, mobile technology, privacy, confidentiality, just the 24/7 news cycle, just all of the risks that were also part of the opportunities, right? Kind of that the
Hmm.
double side of the coin.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, why is nobody talking about this? Why is nobody addressing these issues? Because not only are they circumventable, but if you mitigate the risk, if you understand the fundamental underlying reasons behind them, then the opportunity to do exactly what I just said, to connect with stakeholders, to serve in times of crisis, or to better a community, or to better your community,
Right.
becomes unprecedented. Also, but you have to go through the risk. You have to address the unpleasantness or quote unquote unpleasantness, in order to get to that opportunity. And that's what triggered me. That is what sparked me. And I spent a year, because before that point in time, I didn't know that crisis management was a thing, not for
Right.
organizations. And so I spent a year just devouring everything that I could on the subject because it just lit me up and it spoke to the makings of who I am. And I realized in more and more of my studies that nobody was addressing the stuff at the time. Nobody was out there talking about these really important topics and issues. And I kept turning, I had a business partner at the time, and I kept turning to him and saying, there's something here. I just haven't really put my fingers on it yet. I'm not there yet. And then about a year into my, quote unquote studies, I got a call from one of my clients, which at the time was it was a public company, a real estate investment trust. So they invest in real estate, and their primary stakeholder group, their clients are their investors. And they called me in a panic. The VP calls me very early one day saying, our president's in the car with a prospective investor. The radio is reporting that one of our buildings is about to explode. Our name is being mentioned left, right, and center. We're going to lose this massive prospective investor, and all of our other investors are calling in and need answers, and we don't know how to respond. And this rumor started on Twitter, and we have no idea what Twitter is, but we hear it's a digital thing, and since you just launched our website, we're hoping you can help us.
Yeah.
So just serendipitously, calls the right person at the right time by fluke. And anyways, long story short, the next day we had the president of the company called to say not only had their unit price, which is their stock price, not gone down since the day before, but it had actually gone up by a cent. And for me, that meant they came out of a challenging situation with increased trust, right, in in the brand equity. And that was my big moment of, oh my goodness, I can serve. This is, I can do maybe some good in this world. And so we switched gears, and I started with the blog. I started with getting the ideas that I had been circulating in my head for a year that I didn't understand why nobody was addressing them. I started by addressing them in a very loud way, on social, with a blog, on videos, with podcasts, kind of like threw it all out there, but also brought in experts, talked with experts, and provided solutions. And then I just built up from there.
I think the key word you mentioned is you found something to serve others. And I think that's where the passion comes from. And I've been coaching many leaders and CEOs. And as soon as we find something beyond ourselves, and that makes the job is passionate, becomes passion. And I think that's where the moment was for you. But you mentioned also something else that I've been always telling people. They're saying that, what do you do in uncertain times like this? How do you control it, or how do you manage it? And I say, most of the time, it's like, we are in uncertain times, maybe always. It's the way you think is like, we think we are controlling, but actually we're not. So how about, instead of trying to control everything, embracing the uncertainty, but come up with strategies and tools to be effective on it, and to work to be still productive, to be effective. And that's what you come up with, I think, right? That's what you come up with, strategies.
Well, I come up with strategies, but what I'll say is that there are fundamental, crisis readiness has developed into, crisis ready is my brand, is my term. I just launched, I'm in the process of launching the Crisis Ready Institute, which is something that's bigger than anything I ever even imagined.
Awesome.
Will be bigger, but fundamentally, there are things that you can do. There's knowledge and skill set that you can acquire and hone in order to be in a position to have more confidence in those times of uncertainty, and have more depth of understanding in terms of what those fundamentals are. So with regards to stakeholders, emotion, how to, if you can't trust anybody, or if you can't rely on anybody, to have answers, to provide you with the answers that you're looking for. So for example, at the start of COVID, throughout COVID, there's been a lack of clear leadership, right? And everybody needed a leader. And this is what I mean by our brands have such an opportunity to position themselves as that leader, especially when that space is wide open and every human is craving that leadership because they don't have the answers. And it's very uncertain, and it's very scary, and it's just, your whole world feels like it's crashing down, and we need leaders, right? So if you can have this foundation of crisis readiness where you understand certain dynamics, you've trained your team as a collective and empowered them to understand this and to form processes and ways to respond effectively and to position your organization as that leader, that's a really, really powerful tool. And so my whole point is, or it's a powerful opportunity. My whole point is that there's ways to get there. There's crisis readiness has turned into, it went from my consulting practice and just the things that I did for clients to a curriculum, a framework, a skill set that you can learn and hone and then bring into the culture of your organization so that you are nimble, so that you are, you know, in highly volatile and uncertain situations and scary situations, that you have confidence and strategic strengths and experience to the most extent possible to have, you know, to be able to respond properly.
Yeah.
React properly.
And then I think it's, as you said, leadership is now even more important because everybody looks for leaders who can handle this crisis or uncertainties or challenging times calm, confident. Because if they don't see the leader calm, confident, and they just freak out too. People freak out too who work in the companies. But how do you change the mindset of leader? Trying to avoid the uncertainties or crisis, or what's like, how do you change the mindset of people when you talk to leaders? Because right now I know they're fearful too, and when I talk to them, I work on their focus and I work on their purpose. But how do you talk to them? What is your approach?
My approach as a leader, when I sit at these tables, I tend to ask a lot of questions. I'm of the firm mind that I will never preach to somebody in the way of like, you need to listen to me. You hired me, I'm at this table, so therefore you've qualified me as needing to listen to me. Then it's a choice whether you're actually going to do that. But I'm going to, my role, the way that I see it, is to inspire critical thought and self-challenge through, I do that a lot through asking questions and guiding conversation through questions so that they get to an answer resolution on their own with guidance and support and facts and, you know, things to back that up when needed, studies, whatever it is. So yeah, so it's not, I always say that as an entrepreneur, my mentors get mad at me for this one in particular. I'll say I'm a terrible salesperson because I'm not here to convince anybody of anything. I'm here. So I also think that the people that have that mindset, or maybe don't have the mindset yet, but they're open to it. They understand that there's something they're missing. And there's a lot of hindrances, right? There's a lot of hinderers, or however you say that, whatever the proper terminology is there. But so ego, fear, avoidance, you know, these are hindrances that can come as a roadblock to your ability to make clear, conscious decisions for the right reason, because it's so scary, or because, you know, you're scared of being wrong. So there's ego and fear. So supporting and guiding and helping them get to the conclusions that make sense for their brand, in alignment with best practice and my experience, you know, with what I've seen through my career. I don't know if that answers your question properly.
Yes,
that's very clear.
Perfectly. In fact, I'm when people tell me the same thing, it's like, hey, I want to work with you, but can you convince me why I want to work with you? And I said, I'm not going to convince you whether you work with me or not. I offer perspective, and I offer my perspective, but I'm not here to convince you for anything. So, and it's when you're clear with your why, just like you're clear with your why you want to work with people, then you start selecting the right clients and the right people to work with.
Yeah, you start attracting clients.
Right. Yeah. So, But the other thing is that someone asked the question, how can the mindset of leaders be changed for crisis management? And I want to add here is I think it's perfect time to connect with people at a deeper level now because this pandemic hit and everybody is fearful and fear is contagious. And I think it's perfect time to rethink, refocus, and reconnect at a deeper level and reinvent everything. And even the leadership. Right now, if we connect with people at a meaningful conversations and ask questions like how can I help you, or how do you feel right now, isn't it the better way to handle a possible crisis for future? To understand who you work with and then how they feel and have the empathy. And because I remember from your content, you talk about effective communication a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me your perspective on that.
So let's back up for 1 second and say that successful crisis management requires two things to be executed effectively and happen simultaneously. And that is taking the right action, so the corrective action or the right actions to, stop the bleeding and take corrective action moving forward, to right wrongs, whatever that action may be, depending on the scenario, and communicate. You need to effectively take action and effectively communicate simultaneously in order to successfully manage any crisis. You can't manage a crisis with doing one of these or none of these, but one of these stronger than the other, because there needs to be integrity through it. And so effective communication, to your point, you said understanding how people feel. There's a couple things that I want to unpack with it, what you said. Understanding how people feel. There's an exercise, a crisis ready exercise that you can undergo, which is called stakeholder mapping. And you really take a look at every single stakeholder group that has a touch point within your organization. And then the intersectionality within those stakeholder groups is really important as well. To make sure that you're not neglecting any minority or diversity, or you're completely inclusive and aware. And so by taking this exercise on, is you're creating that list, you're understanding who the people are. And I'm talking, you have employees, you have investors, you have clients or customers, you have your board of directors, you have a myriad of different stakeholder groups. And then truly understanding in the given situation, on top of understanding how human nature works and how emotion works and how that plays into escalate and all of these different things, but understanding the why behind what people are feeling, what they're concerned about, why do they feel that way, why are they concerned, what matters to them, why does that matter to them, what is their relationship with the brand, what do they expect of the brand as a result, why do they expect those things, right? Getting to the why behind everything. Right. And understanding. So you mentioned employees, but I'm going to say take that to a broader scale and do that for every single human, a category of human, or groups of humans that interact and that you serve through your brand. And by understanding those things, you can then have a fuller picture of, okay, so it's fear-based, but why? And how can we be a leader to them? How do we serve them? How can we show up during this pandemic moving forward to do what we need to do as a baseline, right, as to why we are here, we exist as a brand, and why we serve them, as well as who do we want to be for them in the future. When all of this is said and done, how do we want the emotional relationship to be with these people, and taking actions towards that. Communicating, I mean, we can unpack a whole bunch, but I do want to say one more thing to what you said, which was people need basically human connection right now. Yeah. It's not just because of the fear and the uncertainty. It's also what we have on the horizon is right now there's a heightened level of stress. And that is impacting all of us. Everybody is living this current state of the world together and uniquely. And everybody has their own, it's impacting all of us emotionally, physically, with regards to our stress. And if we don't take the time now to truly connect with people when everybody needs that the most, then what we're going to have down the line is burnout. And think of that for a brand, right? If a large portion so what can you be doing now to give that human connection in your personal life, in your professional life, as a leader, with your counterparts, etc. So yeah, so that's, again, long-winded, but my
No, I
addition
loved
I
it. I
wanted
love
to
how
add
you said
to.
how you talk about burnouts, because I hear many people, many of my clients talking about that, and dealing with stress and increased stress right now is pushing you to have actually to work more, but also burning out, because um, uncertainties and stress, it just gives even more pressure on you. And
Well,
that's one thing that we gotta think about also. And I keep reminding my clients, not even myself, it's like, take time to rest, take time to
and it's hard.
reset.
Yeah. People tell me all the time, Melissa, be kind to yourself. I'm only learning now what that actually even means. And I still don't fully understand it, because I can argue it with, I'm always kind to myself. I'm realistic, I understand, but I'm kind to myself. But the reality that I've been learning over the last few years is that that's not true. And now more than ever, we need to be kind to ourselves, and we need to be kind to one another. And it's not even just the uncertainty, it's parents, professional working parents at home, on top of all of the hecticness that is their life, balancing, professional and personal and children and just life. Now they're wearing all of those hats. All of a sudden, they're the, cleaners and have to do everything in the house. They're the educator. They're still have their full-time job. They're
Yeah,
interacting in a small space, no matter how big your house is, still in a space where you can't leave, you are confined with other people. Just that in and of itself is challenging, because we're all individuals. So the stress that people are feeling, we have to be mindful, looking at the horizon, being able to anticipate burnout. We're on the brink of collapsing, kind of we are on the brink of our stress point, of our emotional capacity for the weight of the heaviness of everything that's going on in the world. And organizations, again, I'm going to always say, organizations have a responsibility to lead, and there's always an opportunity in that. And that's something to be mindful of right now, and to be looking at, how do we create space to validate that, to make that okay, and to support our people to the most extent possible. And how can we get creative in doing that? Yeah, that's a crisis ready question that leaders should be asking right now.
that's great. I'm happy to hear that's part of the crisis ready um, plan, because now one thing that I learned, I think, from Brandon Burchard, and he always says, every hour take 1 minute, just breathing exercise, or just keep telling yourself, release, release, release. And it's been working for me and for my clients. And it's like, even I used to think, I'm like, every hour just take 1 minute, and I'm like, how's that possible? Now I see the benefit of it, because at the end of the day, I don't feel burnout, I don't feel consumed. And it's so important to take time, rest, sleep more. And I think maybe this crisis gives us a pause to think about all of these things, because we haven't been at work 100%, but everything is still going. It's not the pace that we wanted, but we're still going, we're still working, we're still producing. And so, what were
Yeah.
you going to say? You were going to say something.
Well, there's two things actually. So you hear a lot of things when you talk, but one, so on the note of, are we taking time? Are we answering questions? My friend Dave Carroll, who's most famously known for his United Breaks Guitars trilogy,
Okay.
he just released a new music video. The song is called When the World Stops Ending. And it has lyrics towards that. Like, are you being reflective? Are you being contemplative? Are you learning from this? And so that triggered that. And then the thing with the 1 minute an hour breathing, there's science to back that. So the Heart Math Institute has science. If you do heart focused, they call it heart centered breathing or heart focused breaths. So you're breathing in and out of your heart. You're focused that your breath, you're kind of imagining that your breath is coming in and out of your heart. And if you do that for 1 minute, a few times a day, there is science that backs how much reward, how much benefit that gives to your energy level, your vitality, your rejuvenation, so many things that we all need right now. So your whoever it was that you said that told you to
Brandon
do,
Burkhart,
yeah, that it's backed by science. It's really good advice, and it's simple. And we can all put a timer on our phone that allows us to take 1 minute and then put a timer for 1 minute. A minute goes by fast. That can do wonders. So yeah, that's good advice.
Yeah, and people tell me, it's like, you're a high performance coach. You're telling me take time to rest. I'm like, yeah, because you can actually high perform without taking time to reset. So I'm glad to hear it's part of the crisis management. But one question someone asked is a great question. Could you please give some examples of companies who have handled the crisis? I have one in my mind, but go ahead first. Could you give any examples
Who have
that you
handled
noticed?
the crisis?
Yeah, I think he's talking about last 3 months and
Okay.
COVID.
I'm not going to give examples of companies per se, but I'm going to give qualities. And I'm mainly talking about, because it's one thing to see something on the outside and say, this company that I don't work with looks like they're doing this, and I don't name my clients. So the attributes that I've seen with the clients through the work, did I lose you? Are you still there?
I'm here. Yeah.
Yeah? Okay.
Yeah.
So the attributes that I've seen with the results to back it, right, that you don't really see unless you're behind the scenes with my clients. A couple things. So being in a space, can you see me and hear me still?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
It's
I can hear you.
oh, are you back?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. I don't know if it's my end or yours, but it's spinning and I don't see you anymore. But I'll continue going as though you can.
Okay, perfect. Let me see if
You're
I
back.
can. I'm back. Are we good?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, sort of back. So it's the leaders, it's the organizations that have armed themselves with the right teams of experts and insight and support. And what I mean by that is, you talk about communication. Right now, we need to be focused on our teams internally. One, to keep business moving and going and, up and running and driving revenue, but two, to make sure we are creating that balance of safety, reassurance, security, commitment to what, how much we care about our teams and the individuals, the human beings behind our teams, within our teams. So there's like attributes that I've seen from organizations from the positions that I sit in, where its leadership is defiant against their ego, where even if they're uncertain, even if they're uncomfortable, they're still challenging themselves to gain bigger, broader perspective, to get as much anticipation and foresight as possible to the future, and communicating very transparently, very openly, internally, to create that space of reassurance and leading with a culture of, we don't have all the answers, but here's what we're doing, and here's where you can help, and here's where we want to support you, and just having that open dialogue. So that's one of the things, and I've seen a direct translation, a correlation from that mindset as an example, and that ability to lead in that capacity, to the sustainability of the business. Because when you're able to be flexible and versatile and open when it's challenging, you're also flexible and versatile and open to reevaluating and being nimble in your adjustment to the blows that, you know, the crisis that the pandemic is, the different areas of blows that the pandemic is impacting. Does that make sense?
Yes. But
I don't
also,
know if you heard me that. Okay.
I heard you perfectly and I see you perfectly, so no worries. Um, and you also mentioned it's why we do what, clear with their purpose and clear with their why. And can you hear me?
Not so much. It's choppy.
Um, Let me see if I can. Is it better now? I hope it's better. No. Okay. Here we go.
I think that I can hear you better now, but I still can't see you. So I don't know if other people are experiencing the same thing as I am.
Let me see. Can you hear us? Let's see. Well, they can. They say they can, and I'm getting messages. So let's we actually we spent 30 minutes. So I promise I want to be respectful to your time and everybody's time. Let's finish with a couple comments, and then I'm so grateful that you joined us today, and I'm so happy that you gave us your knowledge, your wisdom. What I wanted to say, yeah, what I wanted to finish with, they say they can hear us. So I think when you're clear with your purpose, when you're clear with your why, it's easier to pivot the business and adapt to the crisis. And that's what you mentioned several. With why we do what we do, it's easier to manage it. It's easier to even lead with the same mentality, because as you said, when you show people vision, people still want to go and move forward towards that vision, even in crisis. I think that's important. Last thing, do you have anything else that you want to share with people or with my audience? Anything else that you want to touch on?
That just to really answer that person's question, because I know it's a really relatable question. Being clear on your why is really important, especially when you're hit with controversial issues, or movements, and you don't know movements like the whole Black Lives Matter and the systemic racial inequity that is just becoming so evident, and we're getting a deeper understanding into the holisticness of what that even means and how that exists and permeates. It shouldn't be seen as controversial, in my opinion. That said, it can be very uncomfortable. So when you talk about understanding your why, it can be very uncomfortable as a conservative company, for example, that believes in equality but likes to stay apolitical. How do you respond here? That's when you go back to your why. That is when you want to sit down and understand. I have the crisis ready formula for managing controversy, and this applies here, but you want to understand where you sit on the bigger picture of the deeper underlying systemic issue, and what change you want to see in the world, and how you believe that your organization can be a part of that change. And that's kind of goes back to your why, and that should give you strength and confidence to communicate effectively or to take proactive actions towards that without feeling like you're being political, right? You're looking at this is to better equality and justice for every single human being for whom it should be their birthright. That's one kind of crisis management. The other thing that we're presented with, as an example with COVID, is it's deeper than simply understanding your why. Because if you are a manufacturer and you manufacture, I don't know, paper towel, I'm looking at my paper towels, right? Your why, I don't know what your why could be there, because you're not my client, but your why might be very values-based and very, you want to do it in an eco way that protects the planet and prevents deforestation and different whys like that. It could also be that you happen to be really good at producing paper towel, right? So then your why won't necessarily guide your crisis management for that type of incident and that type of impact is what I'm trying to get to. So looking at that is also being very clear on tactics of crisis management that you're equipping yourself with the right resources and tools and support, that when you aren't getting leadership from government and who you would expect to lead you through this crisis, how can you not be dependent on their inadequacies if they exist, and still lead your business and your communities, your stakeholders? So my whole point is the companies who have done that well in both, one is one, and I've already said it, and the other one is having that confidence, that understanding of what is required, and having the strength and the confidence and the trust to move forward with because it's extremely uncomfortable. Managing a crisis is very scary. It's very uncomfortable. And so equipping yourself and your team with the knowledge and the skill set, which is all learnable and all honeable, to be able to live in that space of uncomfortableness and still lead properly through it. I don't know if that makes sense, but I'm trying to answer the question without giving it concrete examples in a way that hopefully translates into, let's not just look at what other people have done, but what does this mean for you and your business and how can you do it? So I hope that that's helpful.
It is helpful. Yeah. It's also not easy to come up with why all the time, or the purpose, if you're manufacturing something like paper towel, right? And
well, that's probably a bad example, because you could be anti-deforestation and have a great purpose in this world that we need.
That's what I was gonna say. The next, you can still find a way to serve the community or serve the people, the customers. And the other thing is that most people who have been successful in this crisis, most companies who are in love with their clients instead of being in love with their product. One of the things that I noticed, like I live in Los Angeles, and there's a restaurant in Newport Beach that I find out that as soon as the crisis hit, the COVID hits, he started giving free food to his clients, his customers, and then also delivering to the hospitals for doctors. And he was on news. He is making more business than ever in 3 months. Everybody's so appreciative. So it's because he was focusing on serving. He was focusing on handling the crisis with the vision of how can I help? Yeah. And just thinking selflessly, and this, because if he focused on something, how am I going to make money right now because nobody comes to my restaurant? I know he would have been more stressful, and the people who work for him will be more stressful. And then you make more mistakes even at that time. And when you feel that way, when you act that way.
And so and I'll give you another example is, a client of mine is a small business, a large impact in terms of large scale risk, but small business, small team, family owned, local business. And they were completely shut down, right, with COVID. So they were shut down for, I think, 2 months, and they were non-essential. And what they did, they weren't making any money, right? There was no revenue being driven. They had to take some cuts, and obviously there's impact there, but they still, to your point, they said, how can we serve our community? And they came up with this hashtag that was survive by supporting, something like that, surviving by supporting, or something along those lines. I can't remember exactly off the top of my head, but then they pitched that hashtag to the Chamber of Commerce in their region, and the Chamber of Commerce loved it. So now they collaborated, and it was a whole campaign, not a paid for campaign, right? Just on social media. And they said, if everybody within our community is suffering, is worried, is concerned, is scared, is stressed, how can we be some light? We're not making any money, we won't be promoting ourselves necessarily, but how can we bring light to our community? And they started to support local businesses that were still open as they could, or buying gift certificates from those that weren't open, and posting about it and saying, you know, have you heard about so-and-so? And they're, you know, we don't go to Home Depot, we go to the local hardware store, for example. And so they started to create this sense of community and support within their community. They weren't making any money, but what's the resonance? What is the emotional connection that you build with your community, with your stakeholders?
Yeah.
And where does that bring you once the doors can open again, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
taking that approach, but that is scary. You have to see beyond the fear in order to even do something like that. And that's a small scale. Then there's companies that are, you know, Fortune 500 companies that are downsizing massively because of the impact of COVID. How do you, you know, and that's why I don't like to give specific examples. I like to give framework that say, you know, here's an example, but here's how that might apply to you.
Got it. One specific example maybe we can give is Nike did a great job by responding the crisis right away. You know, famous people working out at home. It's like they did commercial right away. Well, their motto is just do it, right? So that probably helped. They just did it right away. And one good example as far as the company we can give. But thank you so much for your time. Anything else that you want to add?
No, just for everybody to keep being safe and social distancing responsibly, and to keep, I don't know, just we need more vibrations of good energy in the world. So keep, you know, on your good days, send those out, because the stress level is heightened. So people need it.
Absolutely. I totally agree. It's a perfect time to connect with people at a deeper level, and it's perfect time to reinvent our business and ourselves. I think all the struggles, even in my life, all the companies probably the same. If you go through the struggle, there's always light at the end of the tunnel, and
Yes,
you come back, you come out stronger.
yes.
And that's what we need to strive, I think. Again, thank you so much. And people can reach you on melissaagnes.com, and you started coaching too, right?
Yeah, I coach. I do a lot of things. You can go to the crisisreadyinstitute.com or crisisready.com. That's my startup that we're launching, and there's resources there, and there's about to be a lot more resources there. So if people want more of this knowledge, you can go there for that.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you. Thank you. Take care.